Your Excellency, Minister Chole, Minister Hu, distinguished guests, and especially our Chinese hosts for making this such a wonderful occasion. I celebrate the content and the spirit of the speeches that we have heard this morning. President Xi Jinping said, "No system of governance is universal. No civilization is superior to another, and no one country can dictate to the world. The problem is the masters of war do not accept this. They brandish their exceptionalism, their manifest destiny. They brandish their system of democracy, which I shall briefly try to examine. They sail their warships around the world, threatening other people. They deploy their weapons and their military bases and their rhetoric of war and threats against others. Professor Sachs just quoted Aristotle and Confucius. Let me refer to the blessed St. Augustine in his wonderful book, City of God, in which he describes an encounter on the high seas between Alexander the Great and a pirate ship. Ordering the pirate ship to halt, Alexander demands, "How dare you terrorize the waters as a thief?" And the pirate captain, who must have been very bold, answers Alexander, "How dare you terrorize the whole world, calling yourself an emperor and calling other men as you please?" Isn't that the world we're living in right now, millennia later? You know, we have a surfeit of the form of democracy in Western countries, but a form which is increasingly devoid of the content of democracy. I speak as a six-term member of the British Parliament, which likes to call itself the mother of parliaments. Almost 30 years I sat in an august hall with lots of flummery and wigs and rules and regulations. But what is the achievement of that democracy? We have a saying, I'm sure you have it too, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. What are we eating in our Western democracy? Well, less and less is the first answer. We are going backwards, while China is going forwards. China is raising people out of poverty. Our system is putting people into poverty. France is in flames. Britain is shivering with cold, with an increase in energy bills in households of four times the cost of heating this year as compared to last. In the United States, 80 million people have no health insurance. They talk about human rights. Where is the human right to a job in Western countries? Where is the human right to a house? Ask the growing numbers of people living in tents in San Francisco and in many other parts of the United States? Where is the human right to health? The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Or to use a Chinese saying, what is the point of a cat, black or white, if it doesn't catch any mice? Your system is the one that is moving forward. Therefore, to what extent is our democracy superior to yours? Because we have the form of elections. His Excellency, the former Prime Minister of Thailand, said there was increasing polarization in Western democracies. But I beg to differ. Actually, in Western democracies, we have two cheeks of the same backside, two sides of the same coin. Sure, you can vote for this party or that party, but both parties stand for the same thing, have the same program, essentially, of neoliberal economics and imperialism abroad. What kind of choice is that? As I heard a wise man, Chinese man, say on television, in China you cannot change the party, but you can change the policies. In Western democracies, you can change the party, but you cannot change the policies. It's 25 years since I last spoke in Beijing, so long ago that the present foreign minister of China was one of my audience taking notes at my speech. The kind of development we have seen in China over these 25 years, particularly over the last decade, is a lesson to other so-called democracies. We live in a world where some countries arrogate to themselves the power of diktat. What a contrast with China. This is the first day of Ramadan. I have all of my life been closely associated with the Arab world, with the broader Muslim world. China achieved more in the last few weeks in bringing together Saudi Arabia and Iran, the schools of the Sunni and Shia branches of Islam. China achieved more in the last few weeks than decades of Western domination, including, as my good friend, His Excellency, Senator from Pakistan, reminded us. This is the 20th anniversary of an entirely illegal invasion of a sovereign member of the United Nations, which threatened no other member of the United Nations, in defiance of the Charter of the United Nations, in defiance of international law, in which millions of people were either killed or maimed or displaced, dispersed as refugees, and fanatic extremism was generated. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the alphabet soup of fanatic extremism cascaded all over the world. These are the achievements of the people who tell us they are exceptional. These are the achievements of the people who tell us it's their way or the highway. Well, I think I speak for a growing number of people who do not yet know, and we must work to tell them what whole process democracy whole process people's democracy means. They don't yet know that. But they do know their own democracy isn't working because it isn't producing anything for them, and it is sowing not just disharmony, but hatred, violence, bloodshed, and war around the world. Our friend in the best of all these good speeches that have been made today from Zambia made this point so powerfully. Those who have been identified with the gravest injustices lecture the rest of us on justice. They tell us about a rules-based order which they invented, which means their rules, which they order us to obey. That period is coming so quickly to an end. Yes, changes are underway that haven't been seen for 100 years. Yes, there are decades when nothing happens, but there are weeks when decades happen. We have just witnessed one of those weeks, and may we experience much more of it. Thank you, sir, for the invitation to speak here today.